Hey BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and I apologize, but for some reason, I don't know if it has anything to do with the rainy weather, but the YouTube video that I was just watching is like not caught up or whatever. So it's doing that thing where, there's a little circle or whatever. So basically I'm telling you this because all of a sudden you might hear that in the beginning of this video. You might hear like someone talking in the background. It's incredibly irritating. I don't know why. The only thing I think of is the weather is messing it up or something, or like slowing it down or whatever. But anyway, so I am finally filming the video where I give you guys my list of my top 10 books of 2019. Thankfully, I said 19 and not 9. Oh, there it goes. See? I'm sure you guys can hear the music in the video. Oh, and it did it again! The only thing I think of is the stupid weather slowing it down or something. But at least there's something better to look at than just a stupid white screen. So I'm gonna start with going from 10 to 1. Okay? 10 being not the least, I don't want to say least, but that's the main word again, like least favorite. It was my favorite, one of my favorites, but it's not like there's something that keeps me from making it a little higher than 10. Okay, so first, my second, I think it's my second Sarah Waters read, I think. The Little Stranger. This is a haunted house story, actually, and that's kind of what lured me into this one. Although, it's also more that I just want to read all of her books. But this is why that's why I chose to read this one next. And after that, this year, I'm going to read Tipping the Velvet, which I didn't mean to do this on purpose, but it feels like I'm going to be reading a Sarah Waters book every year. And maybe I'm doing that unconsciously because I don't know if she's going to publish another book anytime soon. I don't even know, how old she is. But, although it doesn't, no matter how old an author is, it doesn't, unless they're so, they're incapable of holding a pen, or their mind isn't there anymore. I think authors will continue to write for as long as they're capable of writing. Like I said, this one is a haunted house story, but it takes place, of course, in England right after, it's post-war, and I don't remember if it's post-war World War II or World War I, but our main characters, Dr. Faraday, he is a middle-class doctor, and he is called to treat a servant at the house at Hundreds Hall, which is a very famous house in their town, and coincidentally, his mother was a servant there when the family was still, in power and, still well known. And he loves the house. He is drawn to the house, and he finally gets to go inside, and, of course, she's the only servant there. And it turns out she's, one of the few. There's more than one servant, but the house is basically falling apart. And all that's left is a few servants, and then the 3 remaining family members. So when he gets there, he treats the young servant girl, who it turns out that she's just a little homesick, so she's not actually sick. And he forms a relationship with the 3 remaining family members. And he even tries to help the son. Let me see if it says his name. Oh, Iris family? I don't know how to say the last name. It doesn't say their names. The son who is going through PTSD. He was in the war, But the problem is he has to, because he's the only male heir left, so it's his responsibility to take care of the house. But because of what he's kind of going through and how he's not very good at his responsibilities, and his sister has taken over the house, taking care of the household. And Dr. Faraday tries to treat the sister's brother, and he even forms a more intimate relationship with the daughter, with the sister. And meanwhile, the son, her brother, starts to feel like he is being haunted by some kind of mysterious spirit in their house. But of course, Dr. Faraday, being a doctor and a practical man, he says that it's all in the guy's imagination, and even suggesting go to a hospital. Well, this creates such a mysterious atmosphere that's very chilling and unnerving. And I feel sympathetic to all the characters, and it's so, it's a very fun story. But now the only reason why this is number 10 and not a little higher than that is because I have mixed feelings about the whole, when stories do that the whole trope of is or isn't it haunted? Like, is there an actual supernatural thing going on here, or is it just someone's imagination, or is it really just a guy in a costume? And it kind of bugs me, because I'm more for there being an actual supernatural thing going on. Like, I don't want it to be like, oh, we suggest there's a supernatural thing going on, but really, there's not actually. It's, we tricked you. It's not, there's no actual real supernatural. It's easily explained by science and logic, and, I'm not a big fan of that. And that's the only thing that kind of bugs me about Sherlock Holmes, too, is that a lot of times there's he always explains things that there's a logical explanation. There's no actual ghost or monster or whatever, that it's just, really, the dog has rabies or something, or, it's just someone, who's really clever, which, granted, at the same time, I love the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, or at least the little bit that I know of them, and honestly, I haven't really read any of them, but I'm familiar with the stories. I've read a little bit of them. And I am still going to read Hound of Baskerville, despite that it also has the trope of, they think there's a werewolf or something, but really it's just a dog with rabies or something, which I'm not saying that because I know that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying because I know there's a dog involved, so it's probably going to be something like that. But don't take my word for it, and, I don't know, so this is not a spoiler, because I really genuinely don't know what's going to happen in that story when I finally get around to reading it. So that's really the only reason why it's number 10, because it just does that trope that kind of bugs me, and because a lot of times it ends up being, that's a perfectly logical explanation, and I would rather those stories be more like, they didn't think it was supernatural, but actually it really is supernatural. And I love Sarah Waters. Sarah Waters' beautiful writing style. She's definitely one of my favorites. Okay, so book number 9 is The Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chokshi. Now, I have not read her, Starbound or Starcross series. I don't know if that's what it's actually called. I believe that might just be the first book, but a lot of times it seems like authors with series, a lot of times they just name the first book after they use the title of the first book as the title of the whole series. Well, I guess I'm not going to run after all, because it's raining. Which, that's another thing that bugs me, is whenever an author just doesn't try to get creative and come up with a new title for the whole series and just basically takes the title of the first book. But, I haven't read anything yet, so maybe I'm being a little unfair and judgmental, but it's like, really? It's the best you can do? Okay, anyway, back to this. The Gillan Wolves. This is a story set at the turn of the century, and it follows a similar plot to Six of Crows, where we have a group of characters who are performing a heist. But one of the major differences is that it's basically about, first off, there's more magic involved in this one. Now, a lot of people, one of the criticisms this book does receive, one of the reasons people don't like it, is because the magic system is very confusing. But as one of my favorite booktubers, Jennifer Brooks, said, I also don't mind that. I don't care. I'm more for the plot. I don't care about, I love magic systems, but I'm not someone who's going to be, I have to understand what's going on. I have to understand the magic system. And when I read it, I didn't find it confusing anyway. I don't get what was confusing about it. But anyway, basically, there's more magic in this one. And our main character is the leader of these group of thieves. Sorry. Okay, see, finally is ready. So, this leader of group of thieves is a young man. Let me see if I can get his name. Severin. He has been basically disowned from, his family has been disowned from the group of families in this community, and he decides to get revenge on them and get his family name back by going on a heist to steal these magical objects. So that is the heist. So, like I said, I didn't have a problem with the magic system. I liked it. I thought it was really cool. And the fact that it's set in Paris is a plus. Like, I'm a sucker for stories that are set in France, especially historical France. Although, if it's another, I don't know if I could do another book like The Nightingale, where it's set in France during World War II. Because that time period, it's just something that I can only read every so often. It's just because it's too much. But other than that, historical periods in France are great. Even the French Revolution, although that I imagine can get as depressing after a while as World War II. But I haven't read enough of that time period, that period in history yet to get tired of it yet. And it's just, first, I like Severin as the main character, and I like him a little bit better than Kaz Brekker, although I have a feeling he's going to start going the direction that he's going to start being more like Kaz Brekker with how the climax of the story went. It's going to really annoy you. He's going to do that thing that, that guys do to their love, the people do their love interest, and push them away because it's better. They can't get emotionally involved. They need to be emotionally distant, or they're incapable of getting emotional and being romantic with this character because, it's better to be cold-hearted and mean. And to not care about them and to blame other people but yourself. And, if you don't want to look at yourself in the mirror, so you push that person away, you act like it's their fault. It just, I hate it when main characters do that, because it's no, that does not solve your problem, you dummy. It makes it worse. And you are going to end up alone and bitter, and that's not going to help. That's not healthy. I don't care how you think it's easier or it's better for you. And so, as you can see, that really drives me nuts when characters do that. And of course, at the same time, I like those romances where there's the one person who comes into their lives that lightens their heart a little bit and reminds them about how they shouldn't be cold and ignore love and push people away because it's stupid. Sorry. Side note. And again, like Six of Crows, it has a lot of diversity in it. Sorry, it's just that's one of the big things that people talk about is they compare it to Six of Crows, and like I said, I think people lean more towards liking the Six of Crows duology rather than this one, but I loved it personally. It's on this list. Of course I loved it. Let's see. I liked all the other characters as well, but it's been a while since I've read it. I just love getting lost in these historical stories, especially if they're fans. I love historical fantasy. There's actually another historical fantasy that is on this list as well. Well, I actually have a few that are historical fantasies on this list. But, and plus, even if you don't like the book, you gotta admit this cover is beautiful. So, I mean, at least, like, so let me see if this is one of those, and I believe this is also, yep, it's also one of these too. It has I think this is the Eye of Horus on this. I like that. See, this is why I didn't take off dust jackets, not because, why I now don't mind taking off dust jackets, because back before, a lot of publishers did not put anything on the naked hardback, and I didn't like that. I wanted something pretty to look at if I was going to take off the dust jacket, not just the title, but actually something pretty on the front of the naked hardback. Let's see. Like I said, I like the magic system. The story was really cool, and it really makes a heist more interesting for me. Like, I would never read the book. Like, if there was, I don't know if there is, I want to say it is based off a book, but, like, the Ocean series, starring George Clooney and Brad Pitt, that's one that I would probably never read if it was a book. I don't know if it is or isn't, but I have seen bits and pieces of the movie, and I did see the newest one, Ocean's 8, where it was an all-female cast, and it does link, in this case, it's not like with the whole Ghostbusters thing, which I think was part of people's problem with the new Ghostbusters 2016 movie. Yes, I'm speaking of, I know, God forbid I speak of that one because it was so bad. But, yeah, like, you know how that one was supposed to be kind of like, what they did is it was, what Terry told me was an alternate reality story. So, the Ocean's 8 thing, I think, unlike that one, I think it did link to the original Ocean series because it turns, like, Sandra Bullock is the sister of George Clooney's character. But anyway, either way, I'm basically bringing that up because that, you know, that's also a heist story, but I would never read that book because what I like about this one and Six of Crows also is that there's magic. Although I think I love this one a little bit more than Six of Crows because a tiny bit, okay? It's only a tiny bit because it has more magic in it. And the more magic, the better. Because I lean towards fantasy. I don't mind if it's a soft magic system or it's a confusing magic system. I don't think about that. I just think about the plot. And as long as there's magic, I'm happy. But it's like the magic just adds. This one has more magic in it, so it makes it even more interesting. It makes it even more cool. And like I said, I have a few books here that are historical. I think 2 more historical fictions that have magic in them. Or have fantasy elements at least. But yes, I love this. I know not a lot of people did, but I personally loved it, and I can't wait to read the next book in the series. I don't have any room on my shelf. Well, I have this little spot right here, and then I have a little spot somewhere else, I think, on here. So I could put this back on the shelf along with there was another one that I set aside because I'm trying to make room on my shelf because I was hoping I would get a bookshelf for Christmas, but I think but I did not. So I think secretly my mom still doesn't want to get me one because she's like, I'm not buying, she was like, I don't want to get you another shelf so you can buy more books, but as I told her, I technically would do that anyway. But that might have made me even more inclined not to buy me one. No, so I might end up buying myself one anyway. But, yeah, Wicked Saints. That's the other one I was just thinking of. I know a lot of people didn't like that one. There were a lot of complaints and stuff about it being too filled with tropes and That was another one that was actually compared to the Grisha trilogy. The whole Grisha Inverse franchise. Which is actually gonna be a franchise because it's gonna be a TV show soon. which I'm excited about. Okay, so yeah, I love this. I thought this was really cool. Okay, book number, that was 8. Book number 8 is, this is the other, one of the other historical fantasies that I love, and that is The Lost Queen by Signe Pike. Now, most people are familiar with the whole Merlin Arthur story. Well, this is about the sister of the young man who inspired Merlin. So let me see. Okay, so as I'm okay, there is a pronunciation, which I appreciate that there is a pronunciation guide in here, because these are very Celtic sounding names. Okay, here it is. Langoreth. Langoreth is our main character, and she is a princess, the daughter of King. I don't know who the king. I don't know which one is. Is it Morgan? Is Morgan the king? I can't remember. I don't remember. She's the daughter of a king, and he has told her and along with her mentor / tutor or whatever, has told her that her destiny is to marry a prince or king and become queen of their kingdom. But that's the last thing she wants. She wants to be like her brother, Lyokin. Am I saying that right? Yeah, okay, so Morgan is the, sorry, I have to look at the pronunciation guide, and there also is a list of the roles the characters play. Oh, Wisdom Keeper, that's what they're called, Wisdom Keeper. Okay. Lyokin. She wants to be like her brother Lyokin, who is a wisdom keeper, which is kind of their magical sorcerer or whatever. But she's told by Cathan and her father that that's not going to happen. So she's forced to accept that. But then years later, her father takes them to House Tutagil, where Pendragon is, and she sees the horrors of this world, and it essentially traumatizes her. But during one of their visits, she also has this mysterious, when she's a teenager, during one of her visits, she has a mysterious connection with one of Pendragon's knights. And, again, I have to refer to the pronunciation guide. I'm really sorry, you guys. I know I feel like... Okay, I don't remember what they're... it doesn't help if I don't remember which name is which. I do not remember. Sorry, I apologize. I don't remember. I don't know which name goes with which. It has been a while since I read this book. But, and it's love at first sight for the two of them. Unfortunately, he's not the guy that her father wants her to marry. Not the king or the prince or whatever that her father wants her to marry. So they have, and then she ends up marrying the other guy, the king, or the young prince, and it's just about her life, essentially, and how she's forced to accept her fate, and how she learns to deal with it. This was such a beautiful story. It's very magic. It's more focused on the politics and the wars and stuff, so the magic is like secondary, I feel like, to the story. and it's really cool to get a story about a character who is related to Merlin and the Arthur legend, but she's not, like, exactly part of it. I mean, and at first I thought she was going to turn out to be, like, I thought she was going to turn out to be kind of part of it, too, but, that she was going to be more a different role than, if I'm remembering correctly, that she was going to be a different role than what the role she's revealed to have in the story. This is beautifully written. I love Lego Raph's character. I liked her brother. I like the whole idea of the Wisdom Keepers. I think that's cool. And now, I know that the romance between her and the knight is a bit of a love at first sight, so kind of insta-loving, and I know a lot of people don't like that. And I'm more tolerant. I don't like it normally, but I'm a little bit more tolerant of it in this one because considering the time period and how people died really young, plus, I don't think he's endgame. I think that she's gonna, and I think in the end it's gonna always be the other guy that she's betrothed to. And I think it's gonna be one of those hate to love romances. Like, at first they're not gonna like each other, but then they're gonna grow to respect each other and then be friends, and then eventually fall in love. Which I kind of like that. I like that in particularly more so in historical or fantasy stories. I would not like that in contemporary stories so much. Not that I really read a lot of contemporary anyway. Again, another beautiful cover. I love this cover. This symbol. I think this is supposed to be the Pendragon seal or whatever. Let me check and see if this is another one with the. Nope, it's a blank. See, this is what I don't like. This is why I won't take off the dust jacket. I prefer a story. I mean, I understand, like, dust jackets are annoying, and you know, you want to protect the dust jacket because it is really beautiful. So when you go to, like, if I go to the pool and stuff, then maybe it would be better if I took the dust jacket off. But like I said, I don't like it whenever the covers don't have anything on the book, on the naked hardback. Yeah, this is such a great book, especially if you're a fan of the whole Arthurian legend. I think you would really like this one. I could be wrong, but okay. Next is, okay, I did not mean to do this, but the next one is the other historical fantasy, and that is His Majesty Dragons. Now, I've read 2 books in this series this year. I finished this one because I want to say I probably started this one in 2018, but I finished this one in 2019, and then I did read Throne of Jade. Oh, it's thunderstorm. I hope the power doesn't go out. I'm really mad, especially if it goes out in the middle of making this video, then I'm going to start over with this video, so fingers crossed it doesn't happen. This one's also blurred by Stephen King. There was another book I had here that was blurred by Stephen King. I think the Little Stranger also blurred by Stephen King. So this one is really, I love this one because I'm not a big I don't read a lot of war books. I'm not a big fan of those. I mean, I've made exceptions here and there. But I like more of the political intrigue where you get the political side to history. I prefer that. And, but this is set during the Napoleonic era, and it's the idea of what if we had dragons during the Napoleonic Wars. So it's magic, but in the form of the introduction of dragons. And our main character, Will Lawrence, is a Navy captain during this war. And him and his crew infiltrate a French vessel, which I believe is going to China. And they find a dragon egg on that ship and decide to take it. Because, I mean, they're in the middle of war, so what else, unfortunately, what else are they going to do? So they take the egg, and Lawrence, knows that he has to have someone take the egg and raise the dragon and bond with the dragon. And even though they pick someone, what ends up happening is that when the dragon is born, he bonds with Lawrence. instead. So Lawrence ends up being kind of, quote unquote, stuck with the dragon, which he calls Temeraire. And despite them trying, and they realize at the moment they can't think of how to get him out of the situation, so he ends up having to go to Scotland to train as an aviator. And it's all about his relationship with Temeraire and how his training and fighting in the war and the Napoleonic era, the Napoleonic War, and learning not just about Temeraire, the dragon species, but also learning, because there's kind of this rivalry between the aviators and the Navy guys. They don't really like each other and kind of mock each other, make fun of each other. And Lawrence is in the middle, because he was a captain of a ship, but now he's experiencing his time with the aviators, learning how to fly with a dragon and bonding with a dragon. So that, I think, that provides a very interesting situation for this character. And I love his relationship with Temeraire. It's so cute. Temeraire is like basically a cross between a puppy dog and a human baby, because he's so curious and is loyal to Lawrence, and he's just very sweet and caring and just wants to learn all these things, but he's so playful, but he's also kind of a bit of a temper when it comes to the people he cares about. But I love Temeraire, and like whenever I read a book like this about an adorable dragon, I want my own pet dragon. I wish they did really exist. Who knows, maybe they did. Even Harry Potter, when we get Norbert in the first book. Now, it's so cute. Now, the dragons are a little scary in the fourth book, but Norbert was adorable, and I just would love to have my own pet dragon if they really existed. I imagine it would cost a lot of money, though, to have a pet dragon, if they were real. Who knows, maybe they are. And it's a bit chunky, but it is a very fast-paced read. But in it, again, it's also one of those books that it's like it doesn't have as many chapters, but they're very long chapters, and you know how I feel about that. But if it's a fast-paced and engaging read, then yeah, I won't mind that so much. But it's a little harder with slower books. Books that are more character-driven or just a slower story. It's a little harder. Like, for example, I'm reading The Witch Elm right now, and that's taken a long time. But at least now I can get back to it, because I finished Nightfall by Shannon Messenger, so I can get back and I can read a little bit of Nightfall today. And so that's the only reason I hope you don't lose power with this stupid storm that's going on. Which I'm so glad, because they did ask if I could come in, but then I'm like, no. Especially because the hours would have been the same as tomorrow's hours. No, I'll just tell a little white lie and say I can't come in. I don't have my rain boots anyway, so, which that would be incredibly annoying, just with this weather, if they had to ask me to come out, if I had to go outside, which I probably would have. So I'm sorry, but I'm just not gonna. I want my days off. I like having my days off. And right now I'm in a situation where I don't need to always, always take whenever they call me. I don't always have to say yes. I can go in. I'm not financial-wise, I don't have to say that right now. I know that maybe one day I might get to that point. Right now, my dad was like, it's okay. If you're not scheduled, then you're not obligated to. But anyway, now I did, like I said, I did read Throne of Jade. I did like that one. And that one actually shakes up Temeraire and Lawrence's relationship a little bit. Like, it does kind of, because in the second one, China decides to come claim Temeraire as their own, and they try to persuade Temeraire to come with them, which that made me so mad. So the manipulation that happens in that book by the Chinese, that really aggravated me. and like it kind of shakes up Lawrence's, like I said, shakes up their relationship because Tamara sees how the dragons in China are respected and honored and treated so amazing, so greatly compared to how they're treated in England. And Lawrence, with the way he's raised, it's hard for him to see, but it brings it to light. So I like that one too. I love that one too, but I decided to pick this one as my favorite between the two. Don't ask me why. But yeah, this was fun. I had a good time with this. Okay, so next book is I read towards the end of the year, and that is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And this one is about an unnamed narrator who is being trained to be a companion to older people. And when she and the woman who's training her are in Monte Carlo, they end up meeting a man, Maxim de Winter, owns a very famous house. He's very wealthy, and his wife died in a boating accident. And the older woman, Miss Van Hopper's taken our narrator, is very taken with him, wants to know about him, and so she kind of, she brings them into to them. But what ends up happening is Maxim is just annoyed by her, but he is taken with our narrator and feels sympathetic towards her and is drawn to her, and they have this beautiful relationship that becomes a romance. To the point where our narrator realizes how much her life kind of sucks and decides and pleads to Maxim to help her get out of her situation, and he offers marriage to her because he does really like her. So he whisks her away to his home, Manderley, that's what it's called, Manderley, and they have this whirlwind romance, but when she gets there, Maxim kind of is so preoccupied with taking care of the house, and no one is as welcoming as our narrator would have hoped. Like his Maxim's family, and his solicitor, and the neighbors constantly talk about Rebecca, his first wife who died in the boating accident. And constantly compare our narrator to Rebecca and how wonderful she is, how beautiful she is, how she would throw these great parties, everyone loved her, including the servants of Manderley household, especially Miss Danvers. And they basically, all these people make our narrator feel like she will never be worthy to be like she'll never be like Rebecca. She can't compare to the precious, wonderful Rebecca. And her shadow is constantly looming over them. And there's even suspicion that what happened to Rebecca wasn't an accident, but that she might have been murdered. This is what a lot of people refer to this as a domestic thriller, and I don't normally read thrillers, but I like this one, so if this is considered a thriller, I'm definitely going to check out more. I'm debatable because I feel like it's going to be formulaic a little bit, and I'm not a fan of formulaic plots, except for, I will admit that I do believe that there are a lot of middle grade and YA series that do feel a little formulaic, like Harry Potter, even the Keeper of the Lost City series, though I do love those. So it depends on the plot itself. But anyway, so I'm definitely I do want to try out some more. Like, I have my first Ruth Ware, which I think she writes thrillers. But anyway, this book was so good and so great and so mysterious. There's such a creepy atmosphere, and I had such strong feelings about these characters. Either I was mad at them or frustrated with them, or I felt sympathetic towards them. And Miss Danvers is scary. She's just plain scary. And as some people said, I'm pretty sure she was in love, or as other people have said, I'm pretty sure she was in love with Rebecca. It wasn't just a respect and admiration. I think she was in love with the woman. And I felt like I kind of related to the main character. Like, I've always been a very shy, insecure person and very quiet. And probably at times a little submissive. I mean, I've changed. I like to believe I've changed over the years, but she's definitely someone that I connected with in that way. I mean, I don't know how I would handle this situation. Luckily, I don't think that would ever happen to me. I mean, especially since this is historical, so women didn't have a lot of say. I feel like if I didn't, I feel like it was fast paced. Although, like I said, the times I chose to read it, I kind of slowed me down a little bit. It was one of the books I brought with to work to read during my breaks, so that slowed me down too. But it's just such an engaging story. And I definitely want to read My Cousin Rachel, which is also by her. And then I also have Mary Ann by her. But most people are familiar with this one. It's a booktube darling. And then there's also My Cousin Rachel, which just became a movie. I think that's why that one became so popular now. It's the one starring Rachel Weisz and, what is his name? He played Finnick in Hunger Games, and he was also the guy in Me Before You, but I can't think of his name. I can't remember it. He looks similar to Armie Hammer. Similar, not exactly like at all, but very similar features. I can't think of his name. It will pop into my head after I'm done filming this. So I want to read that one too. And I almost bought, there was in Givens, there was a bind up of this one and My Cousin Rachel, but I had already had this one. Although earlier I was thinking today, maybe I should have bought and just gave Rebecca back to the bookstore. Although actually no, I think this was a Books A Million purchase. But now it definitely looks like it belongs at Givens because of how, like, it looks a little water damaged. Doesn't look as new anymore. But I thought about, maybe I should have gone back and bought that one, because at least I would have My Cousin Rachel. But then my issue with bind up is that a lot of times they're hardback, sometimes they're the hardback, half the time they're the hardback ones, and they're just hard to manage and travel with. Now, the paperback bind ups, I don't mind so much, because it's still, even though it's a big bind up, it's still, like, if it's paperback, it's easier to travel with and, easier to read. Yes, I love this. It's not the pretty edition. My favorite edition of this is probably the one with the white cover and then the R. I really like that edition. But like I said, I'm not huge, I'm not hugely pushy about that, especially because those editions do cost a little bit of money, so I've always bought these kind. But anyway, this is so good and so interesting and definitely a very engaging thriller. Okay, next is a funny fantasy, not historical fantasy this time, but a funny fantasy. Although in a way it is medieval set. Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. I had such a good time reading this book. It's about a group of mercenaries that were so badass at the time during their younger years, and eventually they break up like the Beatles, and they are now old middle-aged men, some of them with families and kids, and some of them just chilling out and dealing with personal stuff, personal issues. And one of the members, let me see if it says, one of the members approaches our narrator, Clay Cooper, about getting the group back together. I'm trying to find his name. Let me see if I can find his. Oh, Gabe approaches him because he has a daughter, Rose, who has created her own mercenary band so she can follow in her father's footsteps, and is currently trapped in a city that is being laid siege to. So, reluctantly, Clay agrees to go with him, even though he has his own family to consider, and how he's not as good as he once was. He's an old guy. He's middle-aged now. And he has, like I said, he has a family to think about. He has a little girl and a wife, and he's not as strong and not as young as he once was. But, of course, he agrees, actually convinced by his own little girl that he needs to go with his friend, with Gabe, to rescue Gabe's daughter. And they slowly get the band back together. And they go on all these crazy adventures. It is a bit formulaic. Which I know I just said I don't like that, but I guess I can kind of make an exception. I make exceptions. Oh, wow. Like I said, I'm so glad I'm not going. I kind of said I'm not going into work. I can't go in. But, it's so funny, and it's basically kind of making fun of fantasy and its tropes and, like, also complimenting at the same time. You know, just a lot of crazy shenanigans, and of course, these guys are not young, so sometimes a lot of times they come very close to failing. Some of their, like, all the shenanigans and the trouble they get into. Almost done. All the shenanigans that they get into, and I feel like, and my dad liked fantasy. I feel like he would find this very funny. So if there was ever a movie, I would probably try to convince him to see it with me if they ever made a movie of this. I was nervous about the humor though, because I was worried it was going to be a lot of corny jokes and a lot of things like fart jokes and stuff like that. But no, I actually liked the humor in this. And the guys, like I said, the reason, it did remind me, I could see him, like, this being a medieval version of my dad. I kept thinking about him and the friends he's had. I could see them getting into this kind of trouble, like, maybe my dad and his friend, who's actually the guy who worked on my bathroom, Craig, maybe him, and maybe my dad's friend Bill, and all those guys, if they were in this time period, then I could see them. But yeah, this is hilarious. And just a heartwarming story, and just really fun. And just a good time. Just it's just a great fun story to get into, and it's a fast read. It is I know it looks chunky, but again, it's a fast read in my opinion. And I haven't read the sequel yet, but I do have it. And I don't know after that one what the author's going to do next, if he's going to keep going or maybe. But anyway, and next is Robin Hobb's Royal Assassin, the sequel, the second book in the Farseer trilogy. Now, obviously, I can't say much about what this book is about because, well, it's a sequel. So I don't know if you guys have ever read the first book or not. But I'll tell you what the first book is about. It's this young man named Fitz, who is the bastard son of one of the princes of this world. And unfortunately, his father is forced to abdicate the throne and not become the next king, giving it to his older brother, his brother. But he fosters his son with Berg, the stable master. And Fitz learns all about taking care of horses and other animals. But then one day the king notices Fitz for the first time, and he decides to take Fitz in and passes him off to be apprenticed to his assassin and spy master, Shade. So Fitz not only learns how to take care of the animals, but he also learns how to be, about being a spy and being an assassin. But he can't tell anyone about that. So he begins his life in the palace, and that's what the first book is all about, that, from when he's 6 to his early teen years. And he also has 2 types of magic. There are 2 significant forms of magic in this series that Fitz has. He will inherit the skill, which is something that the Farseer line has, which is basically like melding your mind with another human, or at least another person that has the skill. But Fitz is not he has potential to be very powerful, but he struggles with learning the skill. And then there's also the wit, which is similar to the scale, except for it's melding your mind and connecting and bonding with an animal. But he's told by Burke not to let this particular magic grow inside him because people are afraid of the wit. This magic can potentially make you more beast than man. It can be very dangerous. But it is strong in Fitz. The Force is strong in this one. And it's stronger than the skill. Now, Fitz is a character, struggles throughout the first and the second book. And he also, it's also really a very sad situation because Fitz is protected by the crown, he's sheltered by the crown, but he's a bastard, so he's not fully accepted by the crown. And he also can't tell anyone about his life in the palace, all he can lead people to believe, even his best friend, who in this book becomes more of a love interest for him, Molly. He essentially can't tell her, and I believe in this book he does try to explain things to her, but she doesn't believe him and thinks he's just making that up. And even though eventually she does believe him, she still doesn't accept it and doesn't understand their current situation. And lights are flickering. I really hope the power doesn't go out. See, there's thunderstorm again. So let me get this done really quickly. So, and the second one is more political machinations. Fitz's life is essentially in danger in this one. And this is more his teen years, from his teen years to his early 20s. And Fitz also kind of gets mixed up in this plot where these pirates that are being infected by a magic that makes them zombie-like are infecting other people, and he's trying to help deal with that as well in this story. I just love Fitz's character. He's so adorable, and you just want to protect him and comfort him, but it's very hard for him because he feels so unloved because he's just the bastard, and his mentor figures are very hard on him. And he's, like I said, he's not fully accepted by the crown. Yes, he's protected and sheltered by the crown, but he's still a bastard. And people will still bully him. And then Molly, his relationship with Molly constantly is all over the place, because they can't be together, and she didn't believe him at first. And I definitely understand her feelings, but at the same time, it's like, honey, it's not his fault that he's in the situation he's in. He was just born into this situation. He can't control this situation. But, like I said, I understand and I sympathize with her as well. But his story is so fun, despite how depressing it can be. And you just, like I said, you just love Fitz, and he's just such a sweet boy that you just want to protect him. Okay, so the next book that was book number 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. I think that was 4. Yeah, 4 because I have 3 more to go. Next is, okay, so I read quite a few Stephen King, a handful of Stephen King books this year, in 2019. But I ended up picking this one as my favorite, Misery. This is about an author, Paul Sheldon, who he writes this really popular commercial series, the Misery Chastain series, about historical fiction adventure mystery story. And he finally decides he wants to write something that he's more passionate about, that has more meaning to him, that he cares about more, and he decides to end the Misery series and kill off her character. And a lot of fans, particularly women, are not very happy with him. And while he is driving through the Colorado Rockies during the wintertime, he crashes his car and is rescued by his #1 fan, Annie Wilkes, who was really pissed off about him ending the series and killing off the character. So she essentially holds him hostage and nurses him back to health, because he has a broken leg, and she's not the best nurse. Basically, she's psychotic. And eventually she's like, okay, I'll let you go, but I am not gonna let you go until you write a final Misery book for me and bring her character back, and just write it for me. So this book is so, it's kind of so scary, because I mean, Annie Wilkes is just a human being. She's just a woman. She doesn't have supernatural powers. She's not a literal monster, or she's a more metaphorical monster, because she is just a human being that does not have powers. She's not like Pennywise the clown or the ghost in The Shining. She's just a regular woman who is a little messed up here. And, you know, even though most of the people I know that are fans of something are not as crazy, it's kind of scary to think, in a way, we can relate to her in a small way, because we are also fans, and we also can be very passionate and get very argumentative and get very emotional if the series does not go the way we want it to. I mean, I have, you know, this is what happened with Once Upon a Time, and that I loved that show, but then it started going in a direction I did not like, and myself along with other people were not pleased and would get into arguments with other fans, and it was always Rumpelstiltskin fans versus Hook fans, and it got really ugly, and it got very stressful and very emotional. Now, I would never take it to that level, the level that Annie Wilkes does. I mean, although I made jokes, but that's what makes this novel so much scarier. Now, of course, one of the other ones that probably is my second favorite that I've read this year by him, Pet Sematary, I think that was a lot harder for King to write and a lot scarier in his opinion because of what it deals with, what it copes with. But I feel like this one really also copes with something that's very fan culture and how fans can get a little crazy and obsessive. And Annie Wilkes is just a nutcase. She's and this is just so good and so great and very fast paced, you know. I think this is, along with Pet Sematary, are two of his novels, and I think a lot of people that are a little reluctant to like, that have not entirely fallen in love with Stephen King, just check these out at least, in my opinion anyway. Okay, next is two more books to go. So, next one, book number 2, is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. First of all, what really got my attention for this book is it is all about Shakespeare and theater. That's the first thing that got my attention about this novel. Now, this is another one that's compared to another book, and that is, it's compared to Donna Tartt's The Secret History, because it has a very similar plot, like how the Gillan Wolves has a similar plot to Six of Crows. In this case, I don't know which one I like better, because they both were amazing. This is centered around a group of young college students who are a bit pretentious and love the theater. They are Shakespeare aficionados, and they put on Shakespeare plays every year. And then one day, one of them gets murdered. And the one Oliver is the one that ends up being framed for the murder and ends up in prison for quite a while. And the detective that worked on the case, the book starts with it being years later after that happened, and he's retirement age, and he is starting to suspect that, yeah, Oliver really might be innocent, or at least he wants to know the story about what happened and to decide for himself if the kid is innocent. And he goes, on Oliver's day when he's finally released, he goes to visit him and ask Oliver to tell the story of what happened and to find out the real story and to determine if he's innocent or not. So the rest of the novel is basically him telling that story, with all the events that led up to it and what motivated, and a little bit of after, in them trying to trying to find a way to deal with this and all that, and this is such an interesting mystery. And like I said, what pulled me in was the whole Shakespeare background setting. I thought that was such a great thing. You know, it's so fun. I'm a sucker for stories where this theater is involved in some way, in some capacity. And one of the things I really liked about this is how the author sets up the book. It's still written like a novel, but what the author does is she writes it also like a script. At least the headings of the story, like this prologue, although I guess that's really nothing special. Here, this is better. So she writes like scene 1. She has act 1, prologue, and then scene 1. So it's written like an actual play script. I think that is really, really cool because of where this book takes place. I think it's a perfect way to write the story. There are some scenes where it's written like, you know, the dialogue, and she doesn't even like use quotes or anything. She just does an asterisk. She just does. Let me see. There's fine dialogue. Like there's some dialogue scenes, not all of them, but there are some where, you know, those ones that are like fast paced and, you know, people just giving answers and I don't know. I can't find it. It will take too long. It will waste time. They say I want to get this done before the power potentially goes out. And so it's just the setup of the story is really cool. Like how the book is physically set up is I like that. It's like perfect. I also like Oliver's character too. There is a bit. Although this, again, just like Donna Hurt's Secret History, there are a lot of unlikable characters in this. And I'm one of those people who actually like stories about where you have a whole cast of unlikable people. And now I understand those people are like, I want the characters to have at least one redeemable aspect. And I kind of agree, but I also, like I said, I'm more into characters that are unlikable. But not to the point of like Donna Tartt's other book, The Goldfinch, where you just stop feeling sorry for them kind of story. Like, I still felt a little bit of sympathy for these characters. There is LGBTQ rep in this story, which I think a lot of people would appreciate. And there's a bit of a convoluted love. I don't even know what shape it is. There's so many people who are in love with the people. It's kind of, I guess it's in a way, it's a love square with all these characters love one person, but they love another, and, you know, someone loves them, loves that, you know, it's very convoluted and crazy, all the relationship drama. And they also, and it also says this in the back, that a lot of the characters become like their characters, the roles that they play on the stage. And it kind of, at times, it feels like reading a Shakespeare play with all the convoluted relationships and like I said, the roles that these characters play. It's very fun. It's also, again, another fast-paced story, even though it looks really chunky. And then the last book that I ended up choosing was a classic, my first Russian classic, and that is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I don't know why I love this book so much, but it's about this young student who's broke and cannot pay his rent. So he decides the problem by murdering a female pawnbroker. And it's all about him planning this and deciding, in the beginning it's all about him planning, deciding to do this, and then the rest of it, and finally when he does go through it, he does kill her. The rest of the novel is all about him, the aftermath of dealing with it. Like, should he confess? Like, no, he shouldn't confess. There's a detective on the case, and he's, you know, paranoid whether this guy figures out that I'm the murderer. He's worried that his best friend will figure out that he did it. And it's just crazy, and there is a lot of philosophy in this, you know, philosophical discussions. There's a subplot of his relationship with this woman who, I believe she plays her off as she is a prostitute to make money for her family. there's also the subplot of his relationship with his sister and what's going on with his sister. Our main character, Raskolnikov is his name. He's been exchanging letters between himself and his mother, and she has been updating with him what's going on, which is that his sister took on a job as a housekeeper to a couple, and but the husband started hitting on his sister, and she I can't remember I don't remember all of that what happened, but he ends up blackmailing the sister so that she'll marry him. And then I believe there's another guy who also blackmails the sister when she arrives when the sister and the mom arrive to visit the brother and ask him for help directly. So I was so intrigued, and I wanted to know more. I wanted to know what was going to happen, and I wanted to know, was Raskolnikov going to confess, or maybe he wasn't going to confess, but would he still get caught and end up in prison, and, what was going on with the sister? Was she going to have to marry one of these guys? Was she going to get out of it? Was his best friend going to figure out? And there's also, the best friend also likes the sister, too, which I feel bad for, because these three guys are both after her, in a way. So, although I liked his best friend, he was cool. He's a little nicer and more appealing than the other two guys, the other two options. And it was so engaging and interesting to read about this situation and trying to find out what was going to happen. I was getting very nervous and very anxious as I was reading it. And it did start slow, but once, as I've said in the past about when I've talked about this book, I feel like I started reading it at a very bad time. And I think with classics, it all depends on the timing when you read them, at least for me anyway. And it depends on, reading them when there's not a lot of distractions. Especially with the writing. So modern classic, you might be able to get away with reading them. But until I'm used to reading more and more classics, I feel like I can't read them when there's distractions and noise all around me, because then I will get sidetracked. Especially because, look at that print. That print is so, small, and is, although this is not a small thumb print. And plus, there's all the, and then the writing style is a little different. I mean, it's still English, of course, but I feel like the writing back then was a little different, a little more wordy. Like Dickens, for instance. So that's it. Those are my top 10 favorite books of 2019. I had a great reading year. I had a good time. I mean, there were some that were I wasn't oh my god, this is the best book ever, but they were just they were good. I enjoyed them, but it wasn't a stupendous reading year, but it still was a good one. It was a decent reading year. So if you guys, I would love to hear what your reading year was like. Do you have a least favorite or favorite book you read in 2019? Feel free to share in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, click subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope you are enjoying reading, and I will talk to you later. All right, bye!